What would life be like if you didn't overthink every idea you had? It might be something like this. You'd be decisive and action-oriented, and you cross what I call the threshold of action, which is where you start taking real action towards your goals and make tangible progress. You lock onto a singular point, like staring at a bullseye, and progress quickly compounds. It often starts slow, but it quickly accelerates. But what is it actually like for you? It's probably more like this. You've got lots of ideas, you spend a little bit of energy on many of them, never quite hitting this threshold of action up here. You've got lots of competing ideas and voices in your head, and just never enough to take action here. And not to mention something I call the Overthinkers wall, and there'll be more on that later. And it only gets worse. There's not only your ideas in your head, there's other people's too. And you get a whole spectrum of them, some over here and some over here. More ideas simply breeds more ideas, especially if you get stuck in this loop over here. And you can pause it and have a look at it. Now, we all love compounding, but what we end up compounding is something we don't want, which is overwhelm. We get more overwhelmed because the more thoughts we have, the more we have to spread that energy around. And it creates more of those thinking spirals to the point where it gets so noisy in our head that we can't do anything. And then we feel that paralysis. This is a really, really big problem. Now, this was a massive problem for me. And now, having worked with others to help solve it, it shows up absolutely everywhere. So what do we want? We want something like this. We can't get rid of the noise, but we can reduce it. And we can strengthen the signal, which is our direction. We want to generate a clean signal that meets this threshold of action. So you start taking progressive action, while keeping the noise relatively quiet compared to this strong signal. And then we can start experiencing this curve here. And we can lock onto that singular point and let progress compound. What about the non-overthinkers? What does their head look like? It might look something like this. Now, you may have met some people like this. They have fewer ideas. They don't look at all the different options. But what happens is they end up having a cleaner signal to follow because they're not thinking about so many things. Less is more in this case. And the crazy thing is they often make a lot more progress because they're actually taking actions while you're doing nothing. So the problem is, what if you're already here and you've already got way too many ideas? We need a way to filter out this noise. So what does a filter look like in practice? I want you to imagine trying to book a dream holiday without knowing where you want to go. What might that look like? Well, let's say you actually rock up at the airport and use try and decide. It's going to be absolute carnage. And it will be this graph gone crazy. It'll be overwhelming, too many options. There'll be plenty of reasons to go to all of the destinations. There'll be incentives and people advertising holidays to make you, to try and entice you to go there. And if you're booking online, there's so many countries to pick. What type? What experience do you want? There are infinite options. Like holiday planning, life can get overwhelming. There are too many options. Career direction, your future life, starting a business, which business? It's stressful and overwhelming. The bottom line is more options usually lead to more paralysis. So what can we do? All right, but before we can continue, if you want to know how severe this problem is, I've actually got a assessment I've built which scores you. There'll be more on this later at the end, but you can check it in the description. Back to the solution. So how do these holiday companies manage this themselves? Well, they have these things over here, filters. We select them in our search query to try and reduce the number of options. Can we do the same with our life? So this is what I like to call the ultimate search filter. Values are like holiday filters. They help you narrow down what matters to you. And it eventually looks something like this, where you get to focus on this area over here. For the most part of my life, I was totally on autopilot. I was just living by what others expected of me. My career was based on what others told me, what was driving status, what would make me money. And the crazy thing is I never actually asked myself. I didn't even know what questions to ask myself, so it's actually pretty difficult. And so I ended up at a destination I never wanted. For me, clarity started to come when I really began to question my values. It is like this, trying to decide what matters most to you. Without your values, it's a bit like booking a holiday without knowing what you really enjoy. And if you've got weak values, it'll often lead to a feeling of dissatisfaction and disconnection. You'll have a lot of decision paralysis, and you might experience lots of regret and guilt from some of your past decisions because you don't have that strong sense. And the final one is you often will get easily influenced by other people projecting or expressing their preferences. However, and on the contrary, when you're closely aligned with your values, think about a destination that energizes you. It's much more fulfilling and satisfying. It's much easier to make choices because it's like when you go to a new holiday search engine and you know exactly what filters you're going to apply because you want that type of holiday. Let's say you want to go to the beach. It's easier. It's a much easier path to start taking actions, and it's much easier to set boundaries and to start saying no to other things. So here's a quick reflection. If you had a recent holiday, how well did it align with your holiday preferences? Now, think of a recent decision. Did it align with your values? What values were present or missing? What influenced you? Or maybe who influenced you? What factors guided you? Okay, now what happens when you violate your own values? You've probably done this many times because it's a very strong feeling and something that I've been through many times. It doesn't feel good and often can induce a feeling of shame and guilt. You can struggle to reconcile your own behavior, like it doesn't feel right that about what you've done. You feel dissatisfied and empty. So how do we figure out what your filters or values are? There are loads of different exercises you can use to discover them, but I'm going to go over a few here. Remember, what we're trying to do here is to generate a really strong signal that is above your threshold of action so that you can commit to something where this signal is much higher than all of the noise in your life. That's the goal. A clean signal that meets this threshold of action where noise is relatively quiet. Remember that. So I've got a little image here. Here are 5 kind of quick exercises that I'll quickly go over now. But I'll link a full video somewhere up in the screen here, maybe, to where you can go through this in more detail. The first one is your preferences, things that are important to you. And it might well be being in nature, having a lot of attention to detail, working with people, building on ideas, having time to think deeply and analyze things. The second one is the opposite, which is your non-negotiables, things you absolutely don't want in your life. It could be really high pressure situations, monotony, regular conflict with people. Now, interestingly, they will not be the same as someone else because other people will have different preferences. The third one is goes into a little bit more detail about looking at situations that you find engaging and joyful and building this out. The other video will go through this in much more detail. I'm just giving you an overview here. Now, the next one is timelines, which exploits the idea that you've experienced a lot throughout your life. So we can start looking at some of these really strong patterns. And if we go through some of these memories systematically, we can start revealing what some values are. And the final one is actually my favorite. It's irritations and frustrations. These are moments where you felt extremely frustrated or irritated by something, sometimes angry about something. Why is that useful? It likely tells you someone or something is violating one of your values, which can give you a scent to follow. Okay, and finally, if you're wondering where you're stuck, check the assessment I've got in the description below. It will show you exactly where you're stuck. It'll take you through this system I call the DARK system, which looks at different areas and will help you identify why you're not able to hit your goals and why you're not making progress. It's quite detailed and it's based on lots of client work for people probably quite similar to you. It'll give you what you need to start making progress. And if you want to get in touch, just leave a comment below. Other than that, I'll see you in the next video.